Does a child predator have a particular face? Last week, we introduced a segment with Sharetta Donalson, an ordinary woman just like you and me, who revealed some shocking news.
But you ended up getting pregnant by your father.
I did. Sometimes I felt like an in-home mistress.
On today's episode, we go a little deeper into living with the effects of abuse.
A lot of times we walk around and we have a lot of baggage.
Right.
Whether it comes in the form of insecurities, comes in the form of shame,
Right.
guilt.
I had to think back, what did I do to cause it?
Even with dealing with the abuse, Sharetta could not let it stop her. She made up in her mind that she would get past the abuse and that she would live a better life.
At what moment did you say, enough is enough?
Find out now on I Am Ready to Talk Now, a platform that gives a voice to the victims and survivors who have faced extraordinary circumstances. Are you ready to speak?
And I know in the book, I know one thing you said, you were almost more afraid of being with him alone than
The abortion itself.
the abortion itself.
Yes. Because at least at home, I wasn't worried about noise or being treated, I guess, inhumane. If that's even, it was inhumane to begin with, but what I'm saying is, I didn't know what to expect being with him by myself.
You know, as victims, when we are victims, a lot of times we walk around and we have a lot of baggage.
Right.
Whether it comes in the form of insecurities, comes in the form of shame,
Right.
guilt. How, with you going through the abuse, how did it make you feel at that time?
Well, there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of guilt because I had to think back, what did I do to cause it? So that was one of the things. Guilt, shame, two of the things. Unable to have relationships. They would start and then, I would do something to sabotage. So at one while I thought I'm not getting married if it's like this. Because that was the example
Right.
I saw in my home. And I felt, I can't trust anybody like that.
I know all about that. I mean, and a lot of times, I guess, people wonder why someone can't have a healthy relationship,
Right.
or why they can't trust, or why they can't keep a man.
Right.
But they don't take into consideration what may have happened to
Right.
that woman, or what may have happened to that man
Right.
that caused them to, like you said, not trust.
Right.
Sometimes feeling damaged,
Right.
like they're not enough to
Right.
be in the relationship, like they can't keep the person.
Right.
So what was it, at what moment did you say, enough is enough?
Look, my past is so crazy, and I can remember being like high off of marijuana. I said to myself, like, you're too smart for this, because that was one of the things I always was thankful for, that I could be intellectual, and
I saw you had scholarship and all that stuff.
right. So that was one of the things I treasured. In the midst of going through, feeling dirty, guilty, and all that, I knew that I was smart. And one day I just woke up. I mean, and I think I liken that to when the prodigal son, I can't talk about my healing without talking about my faith.
Hey, yes.
When the prodigal son was in a pigsty, and he said, I shouldn't live like this, And I kind of had that moment, like, let me go back to who I really am. And so I started that journey, going back to who I was. I started school. I became a more attentive mother, and the rest is history. It just started matriculating from that point.
How did you get to the place when you said, I'm ready to speak, I'm ready to talk now?
I've always spoken over the years, even though I was told not to. But
That was bold.
I spoke in controlled environments, like you and I speaking, and if something came up and I needed to tell you my story to inspire you, whatever, I would tell my story then. But to tell my story on a level that is not controlled, I can't control where this goes, where that lands, and I didn't have to worry about if my father saw this or if any of my relatives saw that.
Do you care what I'm saying?
I don't. Some things you have to do for yourself. And that's one thing I had to do for me. And I knew while I was being molested that I would tell my story.
And that it would.
I knew while I was being molested that my story was going to inspire people.
Glory to God.
But getting the courage to actually step out and do it was a journey.
How long did it take you?
I left home at 17. I just wrote that book at 44.
Wow.
So that's almost 40 years.
Well, we can tell you put a lot into it. And we're going to get to the part where you talked a lot about overcoming.
Right.
First off, before we go into that, I know you've already mentioned a little bit about it, but just living with the effects of abuse.
Right.
And you talked about how it affected your relationships just now. But did you see any patterns where you were doing the same thing over and over and you knew directly?
Yes, I did. I saw patterns. Like I could be in a relationship with someone and I could see someone else and I ditched that one for this one and I start another relationship with the person that I ditched them for. Yeah, just like a domino, you know. Never just breaking out of that cycle and saying, I really don't need any of them right now. What I need is to heal.
Me.
I need some healing.
Heal me.
So
Exactly.
I think that moment came when they took me out of that cycle when one of them got killed. And I talked about it in the book. And at that time I had an 18-month-old daughter that he and I had together. And that took me away from that whole drop this one, pick up this one, drop that one, pick that cycle. When he died, I had to just step away and say, I'm not gonna hurt anybody else.
And I was just about to say, because I know you said something about you were loving people as best as you could.
As I could. I mean, how do you love people adequately when you don't even love yourself? How is that? How do you love people adequately when you're lost? You know, I really had nothing to bring to the table for a relationship but a body.
And all of that's changed now.
Yeah, and all that's changed now. Because didn't know who I was, wasn't satisfied with who I thought I was, and didn't have anything to help anybody else. I was leeching off of everybody. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
I was finding my worth and my satisfaction by pulling from other people. I didn't know that. They didn't know that.
But you,
but now I do.
you needed you needed them.
I needed them. Right.
And it's when you're broken, it's like I need something to fix me. I need this person. And then I think when we get the people, it's almost like you're saying, like we're leeching off of them.
Right.
But it kind of gives us value to know that somebody wants me.
Right.
Regardless of how I am or what I've been through.
Right.
But when we don't know how to love, that doesn't last too long.
Right, because I leashed off of them and threw them away.
There are many prolonged effects of abuse, and victims express their hurt in many forms. It's been said that adult problems are simply childhood issues unresolved. Unhealthy relationship, detachment issues, and abandonment issues are just a few of the issues that people in general deal with on a daily basis in our communities. For some victims, many become pregnant, contract STDs, or are even killed during the process. Hurt people hurt people. And many victims blame themselves and they live in shame because they feel somehow they caused it. That's why it's important for you to like our page, share the videos so that we can help educate people and inspire them that just like our guests, They can take a negative that has been done to them in their past, and they can move past that and maybe turn that into something that's good. I'm Dreka Shevon with I'm Ready to Talk Now. Follow us on social media, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, Primestone Media Entertainment.
On Monday at 7. Living with the effects of abuse can take a toll on a person's life.
Did you, at that time when you were going through, did you feel like anybody owed you anything? Did you feel like your father owed you
I
anything?
felt like he owed me an apology.
Most victims live with the effects of abuse as their perpetrators move on with life.
I don't think he even has the capacity to imagine the trauma that he caused.
Next time on I Am Ready to Talk Now, we talk the importance of healing and forgiveness.
Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting on the next person to die. They're not gonna die, it's you.
Sharetta shares her steps and journeys toward healing.
That first step is hard, like to pick up that phone and call to say, I need help. I walked up to my father one day in the kitchen and I'm like, you know what? I forgive you.
Join us Monday night at 7 for I Am Ready to Talk Now. Are you ready to speak?